When you think of a classic Western villain, or anti-hero, chances are you picture a tall, lean gunslinger with sharp features and an even sharper stare. That's the indelible impression left by Lee Van Cleef, an actor whose piercing gaze, angular face, and no-nonsense on-screen presence made him a standout among Hollywood's tough guys. But did you know that before hitting it big in Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns, Van Cleef got his start playing smaller roles in noir films and TV series, often as the sneering heavy in a black hat? He had an undeniable knack for projecting cool menace, yet, behind the scenes, he was a consummate professional who took every role seriously, injecting complexity into characters that might have otherwise been one-note. Today, we'll delve into the top 10 best movies of Lee Van Cleef. If you've only seen him alongside Clint Eastwood in a showdown or two, you're in for a treat. Van Cleef's filmography stretches beyond mere sidekick or villainous roles, showcasing a range that extends from iconic spaghetti westerns to offbeat action flicks. Whether he's playing a lethal bounty hunter with a moral compass or an aging gunslinger looking for one last hurrah, Van Cleef carries every scene with unmistakable gravitas. So, prepare yourself for a journey into dusty desert towns, tense standoffs, and the occasional futuristic cityscape, all featuring the man with the most intense stare in Western cinema. Let's dive right into the top 10 movies that defined Lee Van Cleef's lasting legacy. First up is perhaps the most famous entry in Lee Van Cleef's entire filmography, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, directed by Sergio Leone. Often heralded as one of the greatest westerns ever made, it's the final installment in Leone's Dollars trilogy, which also includes A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More. If you've ever heard the haunting strains of Ennio Morricone's iconic score, you know exactly the kind of grand, gritty spectacle you're in for. Van Cleef stars as the cunning, sadistic Angel Eyes, the bad, while Clint Eastwood reprises his role as the good, and Eli Wallach enters the fray as Tuco, the ugly. Together, they're locked in a quest to find a hidden stash of Confederate gold in the waning days of the Civil War. Angel Eyes is ruthless, sharp-witted, and eerily calm under pressure. He'll smile thinly as he levels a revolver, letting you know he's fully in control. Many fans were amazed to discover that, although Van Cleef was a bit older and had already starred in several other westerns, this was the role that truly catapulted him into the pantheon of genre legends. Leone's style, epic close-ups, sweeping landscapes, and long silences punctuated by sudden bursts of violence, works wonders in highlighting Van Cleef's menacing presence. One of the film's most memorable showdowns pits the three main characters against each other in a circular stone arena, each man's life hinging on a split-second reaction. Angel Eyes might be the bad, but his relentless focus and deadly skill often make him the most compelling presence on screen. If you're new to Lee Van Cleef's work, or just want to see a quintessential spaghetti western with all the trimmings, the good, the bad, and the ugly, is a must-watch, an iconic, genre-defining masterpiece. Preceding the legendary The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is Sergio Leone's For a Few Dollars More, which introduced audiences to a different kind of Lee Van Cleef character. Here, he plays Colonel Douglas Mortimer, a bounty hunter who teams up with Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name to bring down a ruthless bandit known as El Indio, Gian Maria Volonté. Have you ever been so driven by a desire for justice or vengeance that you'd partner with an unlikely ally to achieve it? Mortimer is more refined and methodical compared to other Van Cleef roles. He's driven by a personal vendetta tied to El Indio's crimes, and that backstory provides an emotional core often absent in straightforward gunslinger tales. Van Cleef's nuanced performance counters Eastwood's stoic, lone wolf persona, creating a compelling dynamic. Eastwood's character brings the cool, minimalist swagger, while Mortimer exudes a controlled anger beneath a gentlemanly surface. One standout scene sees Mortimer and Eastwood systematically cornering El Indio's men in a small town, Mortimer's sharpshooting skills on full display, accompanied by Morricone's tense, evocative music. The film's final showdown merges personal revenge with frontier justice in a crescendo that defines the spaghetti western genre. This was the movie that rescued Van Cleef from relative obscurity after a series of smaller Hollywood roles, propelling him to international stardom. If The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly showcases Van Cleef as a ruthless villain, for a few dollars more reveals his ability to embody a calculating anti-hero driven by loss, making it an essential chapter in his career. If you're a fan of gritty, revenge-driven westerns, Death Rides a Horse belongs at the top of your watch list. Directed by Giulio Petroni, the film pairs Lee Van Cleef with John Philip Law in a story about vengeance, loyalty, and the thin line between justice and personal vendetta. After Bill, Law, witnesses the brutal murder of his entire family, he spends years honing his gunfighting skills. Eventually, he crosses paths with Ryan, Van Cleef, a brooding ex-convict who has his own score to settle with the same gang of killers. From the opening credits, you can sense the film's unrelenting atmosphere: wind-swept deserts, eerie flashbacks, and a haunting Ennio Morricone score. As Ryan, Van Cleef alternates between a weary mentor figure and a relentless punisher, forming an uneasy alliance with Bill. Have you ever found yourself teaming up with someone for convenience, all the while knowing your objectives might clash? That tension underscores the narrative. Bill needs to avenge his family's murder, but Ryan won't let him rush into suicidal confrontations. Death Rides a Horse excels in its intricate setup. Each standoff feels personal, and the swirling dust at each duel heightens the sense of raw danger. While not as widely known as some of Sergio Leone's works, many spaghetti western aficionados regard it as one of Van Cleef's finest performances, both for the hard-edged action and for the undercurrent of regret fueling his character's actions. The final act, in particular, sets up a unique twist on the mentor-protégé dynamic that'll have you glued to the screen. It's a perfect example of why Lee Van Cleef thrived in roles that balanced brutal efficiency with deeper emotional stakes. Directed by Sergio Solima, The Big Gundown is another high-caliber spaghetti western that gave Lee Van Cleef a role worthy of his talents. Jonathan Corbett, a skilled bounty hunter with political ambitions. When he sets out to track Cuchillo, Thomas Million, a wily Mexican peasant accused of raping and murdering a 12-year-old girl, Corbett believes it's a straightforward job. However, the truth behind the crime isn't so black and white, and the lines between hunter and hunted blur as the two men cross the rugged landscapes of the American Southwest. Van Cleef's Corbett stands apart from his other bounty hunter portrayals because he's also an aspiring politician receiving backing from a wealthy railroad magnate. This political undercurrent lends an extra dimension to Corbett's motivations, layering social commentary onto the typical Western formula. Have you ever found yourself questioning whether your ambition might conflict with your moral code? That moral struggle anchors The Big Gundown, with Corbett's chase slowly evolving into something more introspective. Solima's direction emphasizes dynamic action sequences, such as a showdown in a sugarcane field and a tense duel set to Ennio Morricone's electrifying score. Tomas Million's lively performance as Cuchillo contrasts beautifully with Van Cleef's stoicism, infusing humor and humanity into the cat-and-mouse pursuit. Critics often praise this film as a hidden gem within the spaghetti western canon, citing its blend of thrilling pursuits and commentary on power dynamics. If you appreciate a Western that goes beyond simple revenge tales to explore deeper themes, The Big Gundown remains a standout, featuring one of Lee Van Cleef's most compelling anti-hero portrayals. Looking for a swaggering, stylish Western with a touch of comic flair? Then SABATA, directed by Gianfranco Parolini, is right up your alley. In this vibrant spaghetti Western, Lee Van Cleef stars as SABATA, a mysterious gunman with a penchant for trick weapons and cunning plans. From the film's first moments, you know you're in for something a bit more playful than your average dusty shoot-'em-up. The plot revolves around a bank heist in the town of Doherty, orchestrated by a group of corrupt officials. SABATA sees through the deception and blackmails those involved, setting off a game of wits, gunfights, and over-the-top stunts. Have you ever watched a character so in control of the situation that he's almost playing with his enemies like a cat batting around mice? Van Cleef's performance here is pure charisma. SABATA is rarely rattled. He's quick to crack a sardonic grin before unleashing a clever trap or a well-placed bullet. The film's use of odd gadgets, like hidden rifle barrels and quirky booby traps, gives it a fun, inventive edge, distinguishing it from the grittier fare of other spaghetti westerns. It was so popular that it spawned 2 sequels, Adios, SABATA, and Return of SABATA. Although SABATA may not reach the deep emotional resonance of some earlier entries on this list, its playful energy and Van Cleef's confident screen presence make it a go-to for fans wanting a lighter yet action-packed romp. It's a testament to Van Cleef's range that he can pivot from brooding Avenger to clever rogue without missing a beat. Day of Anger is another prime example of Lee Van Cleef's knack for playing ambiguous mentor figures in spaghetti westerns. Directed by Tonino Valeri, the film pairs Van Cleef's experienced gunslinger, Frank Talby, with Giuliano Gemma's Scott Mary, a downtrodden young man who sweeps the streets of Clifton and dreams of respect. When Talby rides into town, he sees potential in Scott's yearning for a better life. Eagerly, Scott learns how to shoot, dress sharply, and command attention, but such lessons often come with a price. Van Cleef's portrayal of Talby is both compelling and cautionary. Have you ever had a teacher or mentor who inspired you, but also led you down a morally questionable path? That's the essence of Talby. He shows Scott how to handle a gun and earn respect, yet he also sows the seeds of conflict that escalate into violence and corruption. Director Tonino Valeri, a protégé of Sergio Leone, captures the dusty, sun-scorched vistas and tense showdowns that define the genre. But he also infuses a coming-of-age element that sets Day of Anger apart. By the time the final standoff rolls around, the film delivers emotional stakes as high as the tension on the street. Scott Mary has grown from a timid outcast into someone who must face the consequences of his choices and possibly confront the very man who taught him those lessons. This blend of personal drama and expertly staged gunfights makes Day of Anger a standout. Fans often note how Van Cleef's commanding presence ensures that even though it's partly Scott Mary's story, you're always aware Talby's the one pulling the strings. Or is he? The moral gray areas and father-son dynamic make it a must-watch for anyone curious about the psychological depths spaghetti westerns can reach. Though Van Cleef is best known for spaghetti westerns, he occasionally appeared in American-made westerns that followed in the footsteps of earlier classics. The Magnificent Seven Ride is the 4th and final entry in the Magnificent Seven franchise, loosely inspired by Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Directed by George McCowan, the film stars Van Cleef as Marshal Chris Adams, taking over the role once portrayed by Yul Brynner and George Kennedy. This time, Adams is a lawman who settles down with a wife and takes on more domestic responsibilities until fate forces him back into action. A band of ruthless outlaws terrorizes border towns, leaving Adams no choice but to assemble a new team of unlikely heroes. Some fans were amazed to discover that Van Cleef, usually cast as a villain or lone wolf bounty hunter, could slip so comfortably into the reluctant leader of men's archetype. Yet his weathered face and stern resolve fit the role perfectly. Admittedly, the Magnificent Seven ride doesn't carry the same iconic status as the original 1960 film, but it's noteworthy for Van Cleef's solid performance, injecting grit into a series that had become a bit formulaic by the time the fourth movie rolled around. The ensemble dynamic remains engaging. Each recruit has a unique backstory, and their camaraderie forms the emotional center of the film. If you're a completionist wanting to see how the Magnificent Seven saga wraps up, or if you simply enjoy Van Cleef stepping into the leadership spotlight, this movie offers a glimpse of the Duke of Spaghetti Westerns, showing that he can anchor a more traditional American production, too.
Prison,
Breaking away
designed to keep society's criminals in.
John Carpenter's cult classic, Escape from New York. Released in 1981, the film offers a post-apocalyptic vision of Manhattan turned into a massive maximum-security prison, and it's up to the one-eyed anti-hero Snake Plissken, Kurt Russell, to rescue the President of the United States after Air Force One crashes within the prison walls. So, where does Lee Van Cleef fit in? He portrays Police Commissioner Bob Hawke, the man
Escape from New York. You go in.
While Van Cleef's role here is smaller compared to his Western leads, his steely authority and no-nonsense demeanor make him a perfect foil for Kurt Russell's rebellious Plissken. Have you ever encountered a tough-as-nails boss whose demeanor implies they've seen it all and lived to tell the tale? That's Hawke in a nutshell. He's willing to cut deals, but only on his terms. Carpenter, a self-professed admirer of spaghetti westerns, infuses Escape from New York with a futuristic twist on the Western formula, the lone gunslinger facing impossible odds. Casting Van Cleef as the world-weary authoritarian figure underscores the film's nod.
Miss Borgnine, Donald Pleasant, and Adrian Barbeau.
Streets and rusted cars, Van Cleef's presence reminds us of dusty saloons and frontier justice. The film was a box office hit and became a cult favorite, proving that Lee Van Cleef's iconic stare and gruff delivery still had the power to command attention in a sci-fi action landscape. It's a testament to how an actor rooted in Western tradition can seamlessly adapt to new cinematic frontiers, no horse required. Those who loved Lee Van Cleef's cunning gunslinger in SABATA got their wish when he returned for the third film in the SABATA series. Return of SABATA, again directed by Gianfranco Parolini. SABATA, never one to ignore an opportunity, uncovers that McIntosh's excessive taxes are funding a secret criminal operation, and he sets out to expose and profit from this discovery. Unlike some of the darker westerns on this list, Return of SABATA retains the series' flamboyant style, eccentric sidekicks, jazzy musical cues, and gadget-laden gun battles. Have you ever read a pulpy adventure comic that embraces its over-the-top elements for maximum fun? That's the vibe here. Critics may have found the film's narrative a bit messy, but fans of Lee Van Cleef's sardonic grin and acrobatic shootouts will still enjoy the show. One of the film's highlights is how it revels in SABATA's clever trick shots and booby traps, offering a breezy counterpoint to the usual Western grit. Van Cleef clearly has fun in the role, smirking at villains before delivering justice in style. While Return of SABATA doesn't match the freshness of the original, it remains a crowd-pleasing reminder that not all spaghetti westerns must be moody or philosophical. Sometimes you just want to watch Lee Van Cleef outwit a posse of corrupt henchmen with charm and well-timed bullets. If that's your game, saddle up for a sequel that knows exactly how to keep the party going. Rounding out our list is BARQUERO, a 1970 Western directed by Gordon Douglas. While it's not a spaghetti Western, it carries a distinct blend of raw violence and psychological tension that fans of the genre will appreciate. Van Cleef stars as Travis, a rugged ferryman who operates a barge across a river separating the U.S. from Mexico. When a band of outlaws led by Remy, Warren Oates, threatens to seize the barge to escape pursuing lawmen, Travis must defend his livelihood and the settlers who depend on his ferry service. Have you ever found yourself forced to protect a resource everyone else takes for granted, knowing that, without you, chaos would ensue? Travis faces precisely that challenge. He's not motivated by altruism so much as by pride and necessity. The movie hinges on a tense standoff, with the river acting as a crucial barrier. Warren Oates's portrayal of Remy is ferocious, making him a formidable adversary for Van Cleef's stoic but cunning protagonist. Though critics at the time offered mixed reviews, BARQUERO resonates with audiences who enjoy westerns that focus on tactical battles and character-driven conflict. The unique setting, a ferry crossing, provides an unusual twist on the typical frontier outpost scenario. Van Cleef's steely resolve and laconic style fit perfectly with Travis's role as the man in control of a choke point. For those seeking a lesser-known Lee Van Cleef feature that's brimming with grit, desperation, and a rugged sense of frontier independence, BARQUERO stands as a worthy discovery. The common thread in many of Van Cleef's best performances is that sense of unwavering self-assurance, tinged with just enough remorse or moral conflict to remind viewers there's more to him than meets the eye. Perhaps it's the way he stands, shoulders back, weapon at the ready, as if he's seen every betrayal, every cheap trick, and won't be fooled again. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give us a like. Your support helps more film enthusiasts find their way here. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the careers of cinema's most legendary names. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, whether it's a dusty street at high noon or a dystopian city under siege, Lee Van Cleef's steady gaze has a way of making every showdown unforgettable. Stay sharp, movie lovers, and we'll see you again soon.
Happy.